productivity is moving faster and faster, so you should have faster and faster deflation. What does that say about the world you live in? It says you've never lived in a free market.
Welcome to Hindsight. I'm Dave Diebold, and in every episode we sit down with remarkable individuals to explore the experiences that, looking back, changed everything. Let's dive in. So, Jeff, I am so excited to have you today. I have to say, after reading your book, The Price of Tomorrow, I come out of this with more questions than answers, and I feel like I have to go read this a few more times. I love your quotes. I love your references, and your messages, the things you've learned along the way. I love the fact that you focus on family, friends, and not losing that sense of self as a central message to making sure you don't get lost in some of the things that can be a little disheartening. Curious what keeps you going, knowing that this uphill battle. But today I'd like to explore more about this book, help me better understand it,
Okay.
and for our users. This podcast we call Hindsight. It's central messages, lessons learned, things that people can take and work into their everyday lives. Really excited to have you here. And
Really excited to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't want to be the one doing a lot of talking here. I'd love to dive right in. Why don't we start with a little bit about what made you get into this book?
I've always been an entrepreneur, and early in the internet, I saw an opportunity, and this is before most people knew what the internet would turn into. I saw an opportunity to create more value for people, solve a problem by creating a business on the internet using technology. The idea was to create a marketplace for building supplies because building supplies were inherently a problem well, not building supplies specifically, but the way they were delivered always led to challenges of a home being built on time or for the right budget. So I wanted to tackle a big problem, and I wanted to use technology to tackle that problem and solve it. So that led me early in the internet, when everybody was kind of laughing at what the internet would become, to understand what the internet was becoming and building on it. And at that time, some of the best and brightest minds, a lot of failures as well, but were building on the internet because they saw the hope and the promise and what you could do on the internet. Today, largely our society runs on the same protocol, that internet, and if without the internet, you'd feel like you were cut off from society. So as I was doing that, I couldn't understand why prices weren't falling, because technology was essentially productivity is deflationary. So the faster rate of productivity should mean more deflation. And I saw a staggering rate of productivity everywhere. Technology that I would build 5 years previous, and it might cost $5 million, would then be free 5 years later. And the technology 5 years later was better. And I realized that wasn't just in my company. It was in every friend of mine company. It was in energy extraction. It was in everything. It was the base layer of society, essentially trying to provide more value to other people through tools that allowed you to provide more value. And I couldn't understand why that prices weren't falling, because in a free market they should. Because everything that is invented has to compete with what's already there. And we as users use what provides us more value. So that was the big problem I was wrestling with. And before that I wrote the book, I actually was wrestling with that problem for about 10 years. I would talk about it all the time. And what compelled me to write the book, or one of the things that compelled me to write the book, was central bankers that I asked this question. I said, how could you gain prosperity for Canadians when you have to steal the productivity through a monetary system that must drive inflation when the natural state of the free market is deflation? And he said to me in a small group audience that invite only, he said, "What would you have us do?" And I went, that is not an answer. I said, and my kids are going to grow up in a society that this is centralizing. It's going to get worse and worse. The world's going to divide. It's going to look really bad because we're not facing the facts. We're not facing the incentives of what we choose and what that would look like. So you could just see from that construct, that difference. We should live in one system that allows prices to fall, but we don't. We live in a construct where prices are made to go rise artificially. And so I wanted to explore what drove that. Why did we make those choices? Why is that? What will that look like as we play this forward, as technology moves faster and faster and faster? What will we do as a society? How will we get captured? What would it look like for each of us, and how that would rip apart society's fabric? So I wanted to explore that in the book, and then offer some. It was really a call to action to take something that was really important far more seriously than most people were taking it.
Yeah, it was, again, going through it, it was a little bit mind-bending, and it felt, and you joked about this, it felt a little bit like the Matrix, in that you don't want to, which pill am I going to swallow, and you being Neo, and how, I don't know how you could unravel this. There's this moat that people are comfortable in. Those that are in the moat, those are the haves versus the have-nots. And there's some compelling arguments that when you say it, it's just so, the way you describe it, like talking about the debt trap, it's just so simple. You explain it such in simple terms, but it doesn't work that way. Like, it's like this whole idea of debt spiraling, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on what you refer to as the debt trap, and then that idea of how much debt has to increase relative to GDP. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And well, why don't you start with that?
So in the book, I realized if my thesis was correct, that productivity is deflationary, or the natural state of the free market is deflation. We trade with people all over the world to gain more value, and that technology was automating that, would mean you should have faster deflation at an ever faster rate.
Okay.
So in a free market, and think about the consequence of what I just said. If the natural state of the free market is deflation, and you can nod your head and say, yep, that's true.
When I read this, yes,
and
makes
everything
sense.
makes sense. And productivity is moving faster and faster, so you should have faster and faster deflation. What does that say about the world you live in? It says you've never lived in a free market, a global free market. It says you believe the isms, the communism, Marxism, capitalism, all of the things that you believe in, that you'll vote and you'll yell at other people, are just a different variation of a control system. And that should take your breath away, because those two things have to be true. So in the book I tried to talk about what's true at a first principles level. So what is true if you asked 5 whys? Ask why, what is true? And what is true is the natural state of the free market is deflation, and we live in a debt-based society. So, and if you allowed deflation from a credit-based system, the credit-based system would be insolvent. So instead of facing that truth, that these two things are opposite, it's not people, it's not those people conspiring against you, it's a system problem. And those two things are true. So the credit-based system, because it's not based on truth, it's based on I can manipulate money, I can print a piece of paper and devalue your currency, right? And if I had assets and somebody else didn't have assets, the person without assets would be getting robbed by me, because my assets go up.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm part of the thing stealing from them. And then I ask them to work harder.
So we end up having more of the have-nots, and the greater division.
And a smaller and smaller at the top. But that system at the top, the inflationary system, because it's not based on the free market, it's the opposite of the free market. It has to centralize. And it doesn't matter who's in power. It has to print more money, and it has to centralize. And that has to remove all aspects of the free market. And it has to do that because, and it has to do that in opposite of what because think about it, in the free market, you're constantly choosing more value. So as you choose more value and you believe in a system that extracts it from you, you're making the system that's extracting from you stronger and stronger and stronger, and you're blaming somebody else. And so these two things, I know that this is really complicated. It's not that complicated. Economics is so simple. I could actually boil it down to probably three different things. The natural state of the free market is deflation. We trade with each other all over the world. We'll trade with people we don't like when they provide us more value. So it's in service of all of us, and prices fall to the marginal cost of production. That's all you need to know about economics. Everything else is economics from the control system, trying to protect, trying to resolve that debt problem. Because if you allowed prices to fall, the debt collapses. So what does that mean? It has to be a mirror image. If the natural state of the free market is deflationary at 5%, 6%, 8%, 10%, as robots and AI merge, and it removes more labor. Why will it remove more labor? Because if you will choose the company who offers you more value. So if the company has 100 people, and the other company can do better, faster, cheaper with 2 people, you'll use one with 2. So you are part of that equation. But then on the other side, all of that is being stolen from you. It's being literally, because stolen is a harsh word.
Well, it definitely polarizes it.
But what is it other than theft? And honestly, like what grants somebody an ability to print money, to steal your wages for 40 years, to say it's just okay?
So.
And you don't have a vote in it.
No, but we talk about the idea that the banks love inflation. The banks thrive on inflation, controlled inflation, but they thrive on it.
But remember, when we say inflation,
I should say lenders.
Yeah,
lenders.
Of course they do, because the system dynamics are opposite. So what would it mean if you could lend money into existence? So you could create a business that lent money into existence. So there was no money, and you have a credit-based system that you lend money into existence. So then, if all the money was paid back, there'd be no money again.
Correct.
Right. So you lend money into existence, and you constantly lend more and more into existence, and you debase your money. That's a pretty good racket for a bank, because there's no counterparty risk. Or if the counterparty risk is the government, then the counterparty risk is actually all of us, because we pay for it. And so, and inflation shouldn't be measured from zero. It should be measured from the natural productivity rate of the world. Otherwise, it's a concentrating function that has to consolidate and concentrate more. And if you look around the world, 10 years, and so in my book I wrote that, and this is what kind of was a big, you asked for details. I said there was at the end of 2019, there was $250 trillion of global debt. And if I was right, then we should see evidence of it coming faster and faster and faster, more and more debt, and not having the same impact in growth, or kind of manufactured growth, because technology was moving faster the other way. But the 250 trillion in the preceding 20 years, 185 trillion of that 250 was lent into existence, and it only achieved $46 trillion of economic growth. So you had faster and faster printing of money, or debasement, or currency, or more units of money being created for smaller and smaller return.
Is that rate of return, as far as GDP as a percentage of debt added, is that shrinking?
It's worse today.
Yeah.
That debt now, that's what I predicted would happen. It's far worse now, and we're about to get into something that governments are going to print tons of money. Every government is going to try to print money more. And when you say easing or printing, just think, I'm getting stolen from. I'm causing the thing I worry about, because there is no, what does easing mean? It sounds innocuous. Liquidity, what does that mean? It means I'm debasing your currency. on purpose because I won't let the free market work. That's what it's saying. And so you could, and then ask yourself, do you have a vote and how much? And what if the deflation rate, productivity rate in the world was minus 10%? In other words, if you didn't work, you would get richer by 10% a year. What if that was the case? Then what would 5% inflation look like? It would look like taxes wouldn't matter at all. It would look like we would be voting for policy around taxes when it didn't matter at all. Most of the revenue was coming from debasing us. And you can start to see, why do you think the world is dividing? Why do you think all of these things are from the exact same thing? Everything people are talking about, they're from this system that people believe there's this person against this person. And it's all in service of that debasement, no matter where it is.
This sounds a lot like a system that's about to collapse upon itself. And in my mind, I don't see people on the streets running around panicking, but I don't know if you've heard reference to a Ponzi scheme, but this sounds an awful lot like a Ponzi scheme.
And here's the irony in that. You're inside the Ponzi scheme and you don't know and you're measuring all of your assets from the Ponzi scheme. And because that debt, today that debt is over 600 trillion.
Yeah.
It's only 5 years since I wrote my book. Think about the increase in
No, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it.
So it's only 5 years later, and that is and there's things like the Bank of International Settlements 2 years ago found $85 trillion, I think that was the number, of off-balance sheet debt. Found. How do you find $85 trillion? So you want a Ponzi scheme, you're in it. But just imagine this pyramid, and the bottom of that pyramid is this debt expanding and expanding, and you're measuring all your assets inside that pyramid. So your house, the total global value of real estate is 250 trillion, and it makes up 900 trillion of assets. And so your house is in there, and as it prints more money, your house will appear to go up in value from that system.
But relative to this,
relative to that debt.
The value.
And then the question is, every single thing in society has counterparty risk to that debt. And that debt's already insolvent.
So as you see populations of the haves versus the have-nots, bifurcating, and you have a smaller and smaller group of the haves, like I can't not see this coming to a point of unrest.
So it always does. And so if you look at the trend, by the way, 10 years ago, 46% of the world's population lived in some sort of democracy where they had individual rights and freedoms. Still 54% didn't. Today, that number is about 20% that lives in some sort of democracy. And why? Because as this happens more and more, people vote for more authoritarian leaders. First, it goes socialism. And then that doesn't solve the problem. You go left. Most countries go left. Look at Venezuela. Look at Argentina. They go left. And then somebody kind of promises everything I'm going to change. And then they consolidate power on the other side through fascism or dictatorship. And once you're stuck in that system, how do you get out? Especially with AI, automation, and all of this, when you have all of everything you do is controlled in that currency. What ends up happening is, and I've seen it all around the world, people that stand up to that type of regime are killed. They're persecuted. Because what happens is the regime turns off their bank accounts. They're tracked through their phones and everything else. They're completely tracked. It's a dystopian system. And those people are murdered,
removed from the
equation. So why would it look any different here if we have a system built on theft? We're just in a different spot along the continuum of other countries that have already reached that continuum.
So there's a reference that I often refer to from a movie, The Jurassic Park. I think it was Jeff Goldblum. He talks about life finds a way. And in situations where it becomes dire or there's no escaping, we look to Bitcoin as an avenue that we talk about centralized versus decentralized, and the whole problem appears to be this centralization, this control aspect over money, and the ability to print money, and that being the reason why prices keep going up as opposed to down with increased productivity. Maybe you could help me better understand the world of Bitcoin. I don't understand it as an investment, as a tool. I understand it's a code. I don't know really the trust component. Maybe you could help me out a little bit.
Yeah, and again, this is, if listeners, this is the first time you've heard that the natural state of the free market is deflation, even if you agreed with that, even if you nod your head, it's going to be so polarizing to your belief structure that it's going to be hard to hold on to. You're going to have to say it over and over again. You're going to have to say, what would I use? Over and over again, and then say, what would everybody else make choices on? Why do prices go up? Why is there inflation if that's the natural state?
If productivity is going up, it doesn't make any sense. I completely agree.
Yeah, so then you start to really realize what would resolve that paradox. What could resolve that paradox? And here's how I looked at Bitcoin or what could resolve that paradox. I looked at in that book. There's only one paragraph on Bitcoin. And it was a potential resolve to imposing a system that we wouldn't choose on us. And why I looked at and I looked at it probably way harsher than most people in Bitcoin look at it, because I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about anything else. I cared about living in a just society for my kids.
It's the philosophy behind
philosophy
it.
behind that a fair, honest world.
Yeah.
Where everyone has an ability to contribute to everyone else, and we win by everyone else's contribution to us. That would have to happen in the world I describe if you could live in a fair system. Now the problem is, in 3,000 years, 5,000 years of human history, we never have. We've lived in a zero-sum game always, and that's because gold got centralized. And once it got centralized, then you could either invade another land, steal their gold. They are now servants to you, and inside your land, if you use the sun that never sets on the British Empire as an example, if you're at the top of the British Empire, it looks pretty good for you, but it's mostly coming from theft from around the world. Somebody has to lose for you to win, because it's built on a zero-sum game. So we've always consolidated money. And then U.S., the dawn of the U.S. was individual rights and freedoms, where a whole bunch of people moved from Europe that were being punished to find their way, right? And because they moved to the U.S., there were more ideas. And the free market's always more competitive because there's more ideas, unencumbered by somebody telling you what you can do. And you have to provide value to somebody else to win. So the free market's always been more competitive. So U.S. becomes a superpower out of individual rights and freedoms, and then through the Federal Reserve and the consolidation of money, and then first through Bretton Woods and the U.S. dollar, and then through the petrodollar system, they consolidate money and impose that same tax on all other nations, where you can only win if your labor is really low, and then your currency has to constantly be devalued so that the U.S. can win. So essentially, you're strip mining.
So whose currency has to be devalued?
So other nations.
Other nations. Yeah.
So let's look at the Democratic Republic of Congo as an example.
Okay.
Isolated. They have 70% of the world's cobalt. Cobalt's critical in batteries and a whole bunch of technology products. So you would think the Democratic Republic of Congo would be one of the richest nations. And you would say, well, they're not because of their dictator and the control system. But the dictator and control system is given rise by the IMF and the way that that's constructed, because if they get richer and we have to pay higher labor costs for the cobalt, or higher material costs for the cobalt, the cars don't work. They're not economically viable here. So what we do, what IMF does, is goes and does a readjustment every so often and revalues their currency by half or a quarter to make it cheaper again.
Manipulate it
again. And we live in a global system that this looks like this, that it's a zero-sum game through a currency, the currency war. And you can see right now, that system unraveling right? Trump tariffs and that currency war, because I talked about one side of it, the benefit. That means the benefit of the U.S. is they can export their inflation all over the world, and other people pay the price, and they'll be the buyer. They'll always be the buyer.
Okay.
The negative side to that is all of their military-industrial complex is being manufactured in other places. So they can't bring the labor back with the high dollar versus other dollars. So now it's creating this geopolitical game that's rising to the next level. It's a long way to say this problem cannot be resolved from our current currency environment, especially in this system of trust. And so I scoured what could gold work again? Could you reprice gold? The actual price of gold should be right now about $80,000 an ounce, if it actually held. But it's been manipulated. It's been suppressed in price.
You said 80,000?
80,000.
Well, that's a big leap from where it is right now.
And that's because the amount of derivatives shorting it, you can't audit it. So is China going to open up their vaults and say, here's how much gold I have? Does U.S. have their gold in Fort Knox, or is it just?
Well, it's really hard to tell. And who owns it because of the paper exchange.
So that's what ends up happening. The paper exchange becomes the medium of exchange on top of it. The other thing gets centralized, and nobody knows where it is. So that allows more manipulation. So if you look at 5,000 years of human history, anything centralizing would always be subject to this game again, because the incentives for us to cheat are so overwhelming. Because if we can convince people that 2% inflation is the right number, we have 10%. We have 10% productivity gains. Then we accrue so much wealth and power at their expense, and the more people on our system, the more power we.
It's ironic how people view the notion of inflation and they tie it to growth. And from what I'm hearing, it's completely the opposite.
It's an oxymoron. It's exactly the opposite.
We grew.
But again, so productivity growth equals faster deflation.
Yeah.
And when you
explain it like this, then I'm like, okay, I think I understand this. But then I'm going to go back out there, and
you're going to go back
into
I'm going to grow.
Back into the matrix.
I'm going to grow. I'm going to grow more. Give me more liquidity. Give me more money printing. Why are people rising up? Why can't they understand? Those people, they should just work harder. It's so we are the system. We're both sides of it. How could you think that everything you do to choose more value and prices should in that world fall because you're 50% of that market, and the other part of you means prices should rise? It's not. It's our own hypocrisy.
Yep.
And it's our own unwillingness to face first principles. So you'd asked about Bitcoin. So I took a really high bar on Bitcoin, and I said, I came out actually at it, and I said, there is no way that this could stay decentralized and secure against our human incentives trying to, and governments.
You see that as a risk?
And governments trying to stop it, and governments trying to. And so I probably spent 10,000 hours, 12,000 hours focusing specifically on that. Where would it break? What would it do? Because we believe prices should go up. Most people believe prices should go up, and so they'll incent a system through their actions of prices go up, which is centralizing more. They'll believe it's somebody else, not them, and they'll make that stronger. So could Bitcoin withstand the greed and the fear and the all of this nonsense in our heads? Could it withstand that? When nothing else has ever withstood that. Gold has never withstood that. Nothing else has ever. So that's kind of the bar I took on Bitcoin. And as I did, I realized that the way this is constructed, the way that the nodes audit, I run a node, I run two nodes, and my node or my nodes audit the blockchain or a time chain every 10 minutes.
Can you, for the listeners' sake who don't know, explain what a node is?
So the way this is constructed, there's no way we'll get into this. Is a deep topic that takes a long time, but I'll try to simplify it. So miners essentially compete to win blocks, to win an economic reward of today it's 3.125 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And so what miners are is hashing power, computer chips, and energy, trying to find the needle in the haystack of that key, cryptography key that they win. Nodes audit all of that, and every 10 minutes say who won, what does it look like, did those people play by the rules? Here's the open source software. Here's what we all agreed to. Did they play by the rules? And many of those nodes, let's call them 60,000. There might be hundreds of thousands behind Tor browsers and such, but let's call it 60,000 nodes, dispersed all across the world, can't be found. And they're holding this accountable, this whole system accountable. And it means you have a vote. If you run a node, you have a vote in the system. No changes can be made without the nodes agreeing to the changes. And so what Bitcoin actually looks like as you start to get deeper and deeper, that you are an active participant. You are actually Bitcoin. So for me to vote, let's say I want to change to have 30 million Bitcoin instead of 21 million.
Okay.
I would be voting in bad interest to me, in my worst interest, right? Because I would be diluting my Bitcoin. Right? So why it feels like fights in Bitcoin is because there's constant attacks, government attacks, different attacks. You should do this, you should do this. And the nodes don't care. They're going to do what's right for the network. And you can be a part of the network. You don't have to wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. You can be a part of the network. You can be a NIM. You can be behind. Nobody would know that you're a part of the network. You can be a part of the network holding something honest, secure for all generations in the future just by your active participation. And it doesn't actually take much. And once you're a part of the network and you see how it operates and you start spending in it or you start operating in it, you realize it's the first global free market that's ever existed. And why would you ever go back if you really understood what I just described and you're a part of the network that's enforcing honesty on the world, enforcing the free market, enforcing the first time we've ever been able to get out of a zero-sum game? If you knew what I know, then choosing to go back to the cheating system doesn't say anything about Bitcoin. It says something about you.
So when I look at currencies, I look at how currencies are used as a medium of exchange. I look at productivity as an exchange of goods. I look at we've generated GDP through exchange. We look at cash as a trusted foundation for how you do this for this. And I look at gold as like they can't replicate gold, they can't create more gold, they can print more money. When I look at Bitcoin, I don't see it being used as an exchange. I see it being used as a place to store, and they use that value compared to the US dollars and how well my portfolio is doing. I get the report every morning on how Bitcoin is getting valued. But if it's a free market, and I do want to delve into more about, why wouldn't we all do it? My fear is that whenever something becomes a threat to how life is working, the government invariably will step in and take action and base it on security for the nation, the better for the greater good, and clamp down. And you're right, like how can this stay decentralized?
This has happened over and over and over again because Bitcoin is terrible for dictators. A dictatorship cannot survive with Bitcoin because it restores the power to the people. It removes the centralized power and it restores it to the people.
Maybe explain this for me again. How is it that power has been removed?
So if people own Bitcoin, so the money that's being accrued to the government getting bigger and bigger and stronger and military who is coming after you and more censorship and more everything, all of those control mechanisms take money.
And they print their money for
And
them.
the money comes from you to do that. So here's what it looks like. People are inside a jail cell yelling at their oppressor or somebody else that they think it's their fault. And the jail cell door is open and they could just walk into the other thing. into the other system. That is what it looks like today. And tons of people are screaming at this system when they could just walk over. It's an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And so it doesn't care. China has tried to attack this over and over and over again. There are still over 20% of the hashing power for the Bitcoin mining is in China because people would put a generator or a turbine in their backyard stream and mine Bitcoin. Or they'll use solar and mine Bitcoin, and they can't be found doing it. And so this is a global market that cannot be, and then the nodes that are enforcing that is global too. They cannot be found. So what? And I believe FTX was exactly what you described, an attack on Bitcoin by the U.S. government, trying to Warren. Biden, all of that was trying to stop Bitcoin. So were some signature banks. Some of these failures and everything else were attack because don't lose this thing. You're gonna. It's a scam. You don't lose your money because it takes the money and it restores it to you instead of consolidating. And so, of course, governments are going to attack it. The question is, can they be successful in attacking it? And then if they were successful in it, or if your government was successful in attacking it, what would that say about where you live? So North Korea was successful at attacking the internet for their citizens. What does that look for the society of citizens in North Korea? So this is a global new internet. It is emerging from energy. So we have an internet not attached to energy, and we have a new internet being built in parallel, attached to energy. And when I said it's an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, each of one of those 5 words is really important.
Yes.
So open, anybody can play. You can move. You can front run BlackRock. You can front run. Anyway, it's completely.
You can fund terrorist activities. You can do pretty much anything you want.
You can do anything you want. You can move over to.
Not that I'm advocating to anyone that you should do that.
But think about terrorist activities or the like. If this defunds dictators, if this defunds a system of cheating, what would society look like under different rules where it was honest and the free market had to work? The only way you could create more value to you is by providing value to somebody else. That's what it would look like. All of these things that are actually getting worse as a construct from broken money, that you have fear in, they all get better in the other system.
Well, according to your theory, prices would go down in that world, right?
Why would you cheat?
Yeah.
Why would you? Every single person that's cheated Bitcoin, tried to cheat it, tried to change rules, created a different token, if they just held Bitcoin, they would have done better.
So you talk about the open.
Okay, open,
Yep.
decentralized. So because of the nodes, how I just described, you can't be found. So it's truly decentralized all over the world.
Okay.
Secure, can't be hacked. Governments can't hack it. They can't break it. They can't find you.
Can we talk about that one if I can? Because I had heard, and we've talked about this, the quantum computing technology.
Can we go to that one in
Sure,
1 second?
absolutely.
So let's hold that thought because protocol. Protocols are winner take all. Technologies are winner take most. Most people looking at Bitcoin today are thinking in technologies and thinking there's a faster, better technology.
Yep.
Protocols come in layers and they extend their functionality in layers. So the first layer of the internet was created by DARPA in the late 60s as communication technology that would survive a nuclear war. So it does one narrow thing. And then that was an open technology that anybody could build upon, and then layers got built upon top. I'm going to simplify it, but if you said TCP IP was the bottom layer,
Okay.
HTTP was the 4th layer. HTTP was developed by Tim Berners-Lee in 1989 and extended the protocol stack to what we now know as the internet. The iPhone came out in 2007 using the exact same protocol stack. A lot of our technology in this room is using the same protocol stack. All of the things that you take for granted using the same protocol stack. What did you think of the internet in 1989? Probably, if you even had heard about it, you would have thought this is a joke. I'm just going to watch my TV, my normal radio, everything else, like many people did. And it provides
Continue
technology.
to go to Blockbuster Video.
Exactly. All of these other ways we don't even recognize how much we're both the map and the territory. Something changes so radically, providing so much more value, that we changed in an instant, even though our beliefs prior to that instant were completely opposite. And so that's what's happening in this protocol. It's a winner take all. The base layer is the decentralization and security that provides a, if you said, store of value. The second layer is a medium of exchange layer, Lightning, Liquid, Arc, a whole bunch of different technologies that are now used by 650 million people globally. Transacting in something, so in this system, that you pay 2.5%, 3%, so in some countries 10%, to transact in a currency that's losing value. You pay an intermediary.
Yep.
In this system, you pay nothing. You transfer me to you pay nothing in a system that's gaining value.
Is it gaining value because of just inherent demand for it?
So both, but again, my view is this is repricing the entire world. Let's go to that though.
Okay.
I'll go to that, and then we'll go to the quantum thing.
Okay.
So protocols are winner take all. It's going to extend all the functionality you could ever imagine on top of Bitcoin, and it doesn't need any other coin. If somebody says crypto, they don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't need anything else. It's only Bitcoin. And then bounded by energy. The way that I said mining works, providing an incentive to be able to drive energy, bounds this thing to energy, bounds this protocol to energy. And the nodes then audit that happening and making sure that happened as the rules. So some people think that Bitcoin's bad for the environment because it uses energy. And I want to use an analogy I often use. And imagine you have a bakery.
Yep.
And I come to you and say, hey, Dave, I want to buy all of the bread you throw out at the end of the day. Right? So the next day you produce 2 times as much bread, you do marketing, you try to sell more bread, and then I come in and buy it. And wow, he bought it all. So he covered my cost. So the next day you buy it, you make 4 times as much bread. Bought it all. Next day, 8 times, I buy it all. Next day, 1,000 times more bread. More ovens, more people, everything.
Yeah.
I buy it all. What did we just do through the free market force of always having somebody who would buy all your extra bread? We created abundant bread through the free market force of having somebody always
People
buying.
consuming way too much gluten.
Right. Exactly. But what do we do with energy by doing this? We create abundant energy. Because this energy chases energy all over the world, and it can't compete in cities where you'll pay more for your energy. It has to go to edges of areas. It's now cleaning up energy it's cleaning up methane on landfills. Why? Because it's free energy, and so the Bitcoin miner makes more money. So you have a free energy, so you have a free market force driving energy expansion all around the world that also secures this protocol to that energy. So if you look at from that point of view, and you said this open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, and you said, what would my thesis look like from that? My thesis would look perfect. It would mean the first global market, the free market that ever existed, and everything in it was falling in price forever. So if I measure my house, 5 years ago, my house was 300 Bitcoin. Right now, my house is 22 Bitcoin. 5 years, my house will be 1 Bitcoin. As my house falls back to its utility value in Bitcoin. If I measure energy prices in Bitcoin, you'll see the same trend. All prices are falling forever. Now, that's not how most people are viewing Bitcoin, but that is a first principle. That is a guarantee. If this stays decentralized and secure, and we'll go into some of the things, why might it not? But if it stays decentralized and secure, it will guarantee what I just described. Now, that doesn't mean you will guarantee it, because you will likely price it from your piece of paper. And so you'll think, as the pieces of paper get printed faster and faster, you will think Bitcoin's going up, because you'll convert the protocol bounded by energy to a piece of paper to then measure things.
Well, everything's measured against the U.S. dollar generally.
Again, what I'm getting at is that base level of the pyramid that you are stuck in, you don't have to be stuck in, because I don't measure from that anymore.
So let's use your example of
Yeah.
the house and how it, go from 500 Bitcoin to, was it 500?
It was
To 22.
so it was 300
300
to 22. Yeah.
So very few people walk around the streets here with a $10,000 bill. They walk around with usable currency. And so how is it different? Please explain to me, how is it different when someone can take a Bitcoin and divide it into a millionth of a Bitcoin and then exchange that, compare that to printing more money?
So very
Yep.
different. And so Bitcoin is hard capped at 21 million, but
Mm-hmm.
each Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million. So that doesn't mean, because it's divisible by 100 million, doesn't mean you're increasing money supply. It's just the unit that you're trading in is smaller. So you're not increasing money by the divisibility factor in Bitcoin. So you can spend any fraction of a Bitcoin you want.
So we can't divide it any more than a millionth on
Than 100 million per
100 million per Bitcoin. And so at the moment,
so you divide your dollar
yeah.
by pennies. That
Oh,
would be
they
the-
used to be half pennies.
Yeah,
didn't
but
they?
but again, now imagine you couldn't increase the dollar, but you could make more divisible units. Wouldn't matter to what I'm describing. It's just the unit you'd be in.
Okay. So the notion of the security side of it, and specifically this quantum computer concept.
So
If it's not, like, people place their faith in the U.S. dollar until they don't.
Yeah.
And we have this mass exodus of people getting their investments out of the U.S. and going into Europe for a multitude of reasons. But people trust the greenback just because that's just what's always been there. Whether it's printing more money or if it's fake money, there is a trust inherent there with that. And I view, if people trust the Bitcoin technology, and if there's a technology that comes and creeps its way in to threaten that trust.
Yeah. So let's go through that specific thing, and let's you could say quantum will never happen, right? So there's not a guarantee that it happens, but I'm going to discount that completely. I'm going to say quantum will happen sometime, because I'm in technology. I think about these things often. So that will happen sometime. What would happen to all of those nodes? So I can tell you, because we're very involved in this right now.
Just before I should, I didn't actually elaborate. Why is quantum computing viewed as a potential existential threat to Bitcoin? Some people are viewing that because it can read or decode effectively the Bitcoin.
So the way computers are encrypted today, classical computers cannot go reverse engineer the cryptography in SHA-256. They can't. It's virtually impossible to find the needle in the haystack. So the way and Bitcoin is built with SHA-256 in its elliptical curve technology, that makes it virtually impossible. In fact, Satoshi's coins, a million coins, you could say that they are a gold sitting there open for anybody to see and try to attack. Governments, nobody has attacked them in 16 years. Right? Can't, it's wide open. Everybody knows the addresses. So go take them. They're not taken. Right? And so you know how secure it is. The question you're asking is, could quantum one day break that? And with quantum computers, because they're not like classical computers, there is a risk. If quantum computers can get to that's still an if. But if they do in whatever many years, then there is a possibility that elliptical curve technology in SHA-256 could be broken. And what would that look like? So right now, in Bitcoin community, you can imagine how many really smart people are in this, not only in that, but they're also in quantum and they're in everything else. And the same cryptography is the same stuff that protects nuclear codes. It protects all your banks. So there's a whole bunch of risk on this anywhere, right? But what would happen is as you've realized what post-quantum encryption would look like, and a lot of work is going on, those nodes would vote for an upgrade. And if you didn't upgrade, if you wanted a different coin, and that would be, and if the nodes all agreed on an upgrade, keeps on going on, no change. If the nodes didn't agree and one person wanted to keep their Bitcoin, exactly it is, and you had an upgraded fork, then you would get one of each on the hard fork, and the one that and the people who chose not to upgrade, if that became a risk, would fail, and this one would
In
go
the
on.
long run, yes.
And the one that didn't, and the one that upgraded, would just go on. Again, and this is where you keep on coming back to, we are Bitcoin. All of my energy is in making sure this succeeds. All of my energy, we're at one of the leading funds investing in layer 2 and 3 technologies on top of Bitcoin, and all the entrepreneurs who are building this, that when I see, and when I see what's happening and the rate of that, and the more and more people understanding this and moving their time to protect this and build value onto it, these things don't, zero fear. Not we should do work is different than zero fear, right? But zero fear, because we are the thing that protects it. And so what would you do if you saw this risk? You would protect it by upgrading it.
Yeah, I definitely have my homework wrapped up for me in terms of more research, more understanding. I am a bit of a detail person, and I do like to do my research before I leap in. I haven't leapt into Bitcoin, but following this discussion, I'm definitely compelled to do it.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah, it'll take me a while to get there. Now, I want to go back onto this notion of technology and driving increased productivity. Are there any sectors that one could argue that you would feel you don't? 'Cause I think there's this assumption that, and I don't want to oversimplify, but we have certain industries where productivity may not increase with technology.
I don't think so.
Have you come across that?
I don't think any, and that's and it would appear that if you were measuring from the existing system. So one of the slides I hate when people they put up TV prices fall, computer prices fall, they get better, and then other prices, healthcare rises, house prices rise, everything else. But they don't realize that all of those things are through the distorted lens of pieces of paper being printed. And none of those prices would be rising without that. It's just TV prices and electronics would fall way faster, right? But all prices would fall. So the rate of, in the 1910s, you could buy a Sears house, 2,500 square feet, delivered to you in the States for $2,500. 2,500 square feet, $2,500. Windows, doors, roofing, everything.
$1 a square foot, pretty reasonable.
Plumbing, everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing in that house, every single thing in that in that package has faced automation. Windows, it doesn't take the same labor as it took 100 and something years ago. Lumber, it doesn't take the same labor. All of those things have been automated. So all of those bill of materials for that house, the supply chains, the trains are more efficient today than all of those things should cost less. Look at a bill of materials for a house today.
Oh, I know.
So why have they gone up when technology is going the other way? When we know for sure our labor input in all of these things is less. Look at a mine today. Look and think about what a mine will look like tomorrow. Yeah. These mines have automated trucks, automated diggers, automated more and more automation. And so we think that some materials like minerals and stuff should go up because they're scarce, when we don't even realize how much automation has gone into those. We conflate the reason they're going up. They're going up only because printing of money.
So I mentioned earlier the notion of Blockbuster as a business that was kind of seated in itself and resting on its laurels, and technology creeps in, and it doesn't adapt well to the situation. I'm a business owner. I have people working here. We have systems and processes, technology creeping its way in. It's starting already to creep its way in. An example, we have a tax software called Ask Blue Jay. It's an AI search software it effectively will go in and look at the Income Tax Act, case precedents, CRA interpretive guidance, and it provides you thorough responses to questions that don't require a junior tax specialist to go in and do that research. Before we ask the question, we assume the question's interpreted properly. The individual goes off, charges their time accordingly, and a week later we get a response, and that's assumed they're even available. Sometimes these things can take up to a couple of weeks. Today, it's just go in, do it, done. And you don't necessarily know the information is coming out is purely valid. You really got to ask the right questions. So we're still working through that. But that's an innovation. That's a disruptive technology that's creeping its way into our business. But I don't see businesses reinventing themselves quick enough to deal with this.
So most are they're doing what Blockbuster did. I use that example in the book, but I said what was the smartest, best people?
Oh, that was your book. That's right. Your book was the example of Blockbuster.
In Blockbuster, they put candy aisles in their stores.
Yeah.
Like and from that system, that would appear, well, people want candy and popcorn with their movie. That would appear to be a good idea.
Yeah.
And for 1 year, they had higher revenue.
Yeah.
And then it all fell off the cliff as Netflix took it all. And so that is, but that's normal. And why I use that example is it's just normal in everybody.
Yeah.
And most businesses today are looking at this technology, and they're not saying, what they're doing is they're saying, how do I protect what I have with it?
Mm-hmm.
What the new business is saying, why do I need any of that? Could I do the same business with one person instead of 100 in a big office downtown? And pretty soon, and you might say the AI isn't there today,
Yeah.
but the AI will be there tomorrow to be able to do the exact same thing. And it'll be and now you have a layer on top of something to be able to do all of this without all of those people. It's moving at a rate people can't comprehend how fast this is moving.
This is the scary part. Is how do businesses get on board with this notion that technology is creeping its way in, and invariably productivity will go up, and the value proposition of what we're producing has to go down.
Well, the value proposition could go up.
Sorry,
right?
the value proposition goes up as productivity increases.
Exactly.
That's right, because entrepreneurs create value,
Yeah.
and that's right. But the idea is that what people pay for something today versus what they pay for it tomorrow, that in a non-corrupt, non-inflationary environment has to go down.
Well, so there's a whole bunch of businesses, because they're measuring from the system, and they're not in Bitcoin yet, that they're actually more paralyzed and not moving as fast as they need to, because they think nothing's changed.
So how do businesses today, what are some best practices you could say to a business? Here's what I want you to challenge every business owner to do this. Have you had those discussions?
Yeah, lots. So my son just started, first year at UBC, started called Advisor AI, and he wanted to, so I've helped him kind of, where are the opportunities in the future? One being Bitcoin, resolving this paradox, all prices are falling against it, with the other major one being AI. How fast is this moving? How can you help businesses to get onto this? And I cannot believe how fast, his first year at university, how fast he's businesses and how many businesses he's helping. Because 3 years ago, he started reading everything, doing everything, understanding how these agents could do different tasks and starting to work. So he's placed himself, because he knew where the trend was going, in an area where he can be super helpful. Why is his business growing? It's growing because your business grows when you provide more value to people. And so many people don't understand what's happening today. So that's why I said Bitcoin and AI and both those things. And you could say behind AI, the robotics is another trend that's going to come, and then AI and robots are going to merge. And a lot of the labor that we think is safe today won't be safe tomorrow because those things will be done differently. All of those prices will fall to the marginal cost of production. So you have to understand Bitcoin. I mean, it's imperative, because if you don't understand this, you are living in the other system and you're going to get destroyed.
So if someone's going to want to learn more about that, you read a lot of books.
So I read a lot of books. But again, take Bitcoin, and anytime somebody says crypto, that you do not want to listen to that person on Bitcoin. And look back at those people's work. Does it say the same thing? Does it say it for the last 5-10 years? If those people are kind of there, then those are honest actors. There's so many scams today. And so look back at some different books, Broken Money, The Big Print, the Bitcoin Standard, decent books to read on why this is, but you have to understand this, and then go deeper and understand. Then get into self-custody. Buy on an exchange, move it to self-custody, learn how. If you want to look up BTC Sessions on YouTube, he provides free tutorials. They're completely free that you could get really deep on the technology on this and which hardware wallet, what does this look like, what's best for you, how to provide safety to you and your family. Start to understand it. Other opportunities where the market is going is in AI. Learn why. If you're in a business, every single person in that business, they shouldn't be waiting for the AI person. Every single person in that business, it's critical that they understand this. They need to individually learn. And then if it was my business, I would group those people each week and say, what did you learn this week? Right? What different tools, because that's moving so fast. And how fast is this changing? How can we use this personally in your business and everything else? And that will bring it'll activate the thing that right now is the risk to the business. All of those people, it will activate their brains into optimism rather than fear of getting replaced. Because it's not, today at least, it will be, that'll change. It's not your job is going to be taken by the AI. Your job is going to be taken by somebody who knows the AI.
That's exactly what I've been advocating I sit on the board for the CPA BC, and the discussion around the CPA becoming irrelevant or retiring the CPA is that the CPAs using AI are going to replace those that aren't.
Yep.
And so unfortunately, we don't know what we don't know. And so people coming in as AI consultants, it's a bit of the wild, wild west as far as who you can trust to bring in, what is this information that's being taught to you, and how best to utilize it genuinely within your business, and is how it's being used, is that the strategic direction of how it should be best used for the long term. And again, long term these days, this could be 1 year given the rates of change in technology.
And some of the consultants in this space, they're used to giant consultancies and long-term contracts on what this could look like, and in doing that, they actually provide slower. It's they're not moving nearly fast enough to what this looks like for business.
So we've covered quite a bit here. I'm going to have to go back and read this again because I thought I understood.
I get that often.
I got to go back and read this again. What's on deck for you the next coming few years?
So I love what I'm doing now. I'm investing so what it feels like, I was early on the internet, and I understood what was going to happen on the internet. Same thing in Bitcoin. It feels like I'm early. So we're investing in the companies that are building kind of the future on the internet. And when I see what's coming, compared to what the internet looked like, the internet was supposed to be the great decentralizer and help everybody contribute to the world. What happened because of broken money? The big got bigger really fast and network effects, and that is exploiting you today. All of these systems are they're not trying to exploit you. It just turns into
Starts out great,
and then think about what AI would look like with no labor, controlled by the biggest company in the world, when you were trying to get paid by it. What would that look like? It would look like a centralized control system that would be so dystopian.
It's an image of Trump in front of me.
But the Bitcoin protects you from that.
Okay.
It moves you from that. So why this conversation is hard, and we talked about this before, is you're used to measuring from a system. And a phase change like this, all the rules are exactly opposite from the system you operate today. And all you have to ask, the only thing you'd have to ask to what I just said, if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure. So if that provided that big a change to the world, and we know it's accelerating, we know technology is accelerating, and that provided that, then shouldn't you at least double check for yourself that if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, and take the only thing that's non-counterparty risk to the other system and do the work yourself? Or should you trust somebody else by telling you it won't work? I would say that it's incumbent on you to do the work right now. It's that critical, because this phase change it touches everything. It has to touch everything.
I'm overwhelmed. Jeff, this has been fantastic. I really, really appreciate you coming down here and having this discussion and sharing. I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm looking forward to reading this book again to see if I can get another slant on it. And we'll have, obviously, if someone needs to reach out to you, you have a website?
Yeah, jeffbooth.ca is my website. I'm on I still have a profile on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm on Nostr. But if my profile isn't on that website, it's not me.
We'll have a link of your profile on this podcast.
Great. I just there's just so many impersonator accounts of me.
Yep.
I'm not on Instagram. There's impersonator accounts on me on Instagram. There's tons on Twitter. There's tons everywhere. So yeah, I always, on that website, I'll say where I am.
Okay.
If it's not on the website, it's not me.
It's not you.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the listeners, this discussion today obviously is not considered advice. So you do your research on Bitcoin. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
And look forward to the next time.
Yeah, you bet.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Hindsight. If there's one takeaway from today, it's that every challenge, every misstep, and every breakthrough adds to the wisdom that shapes our future decisions. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might appreciate these insights. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and don't forget to have fun in your journey.